Rogal Dorn knew exactly what waited inside those walls. His scouts had reported every detail: the killing zone, the overlapping fields of fire, the minefields between rings, every trap, every ambush point, every corridor engineered to funnel attackers into a slaughter. He knew it all, and then he ordered his sons to advance in a parade formation. The greatest fortress builder in the history of the Imperium, the man who turned Terra itself into an impregnable weapon, walked Noli into a fortress built specifically to destroy him. Not because he had lost his mind, because he had lost something worse, his reason to survive. Before we talk about what happened inside those walls, you need to understand how the Praetorian of Terra ended up here. Because this moment, Rogal Dorn charging into Perturabo's trap with nothing to lose isn't where his story ends, it's where it makes sense. His gene pod fell into Inwit, a frozen, lightless world. Here, a place where the code doesn't just kill, it selects. Because you either survive here or you don't. There's no middle ground. Dorn survived. He rose through the warriors' clans, built armies, expanded an empire across a world that actively killed everything weak. Not through ambition, not through ego, because the work needed doing. By the time the Emperor came to reunite with him and with his legion, Dorn had become something singular, a man incapable of stopping, incapable of resting, defined entirely by the next war, the next fortification, the next problem that requires solving. The Emperor saw exactly what was worth. He gave Dorn the Imperial Fist, he gave him the greatest engineering project in human history, and he gave him a title so total, so absolute that it should have been impossible. Praetorian of Terra, defender of the homeworld, protector of the throne. With that title came an expectation that would define everything Dorn was, and quietly destroy everything he had left. For 3 decades, Rogal Dorn proved it wasn't impossible. What Dorn was asked to do wasn't engineering, it was the impossible made mandatory. Terra wasn't a military fortress, it was an ancient planet. Turning it into something capable to withstanding a full traitor legion assault required him to anticipate every single attack and build a specific counter for each one. And he did it. Walls 15 kilometers high, defense network, void shield, weapons batteries, kill zone feeding to kill zones. It was so thorough that even his brother Primarch could barely locate the weaknesses. But there was one thing Rogal Dorn could not fortify. His relationship with Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, had been rotting for decades through the Great Crusade. Both siege master, both defined by the same craft. But when Rogal Dorn was celebrated and entrusted with humanity's most sacred ground, Perturabo's sons were used as expendable siege infantry, bled dry on walls that had never been thanked for taking. For every fortress Dorn raised to claim, the Iron Warriors were ordered to tear something down. The hatred fortified. It became something that couldn't be resolved by rank or reason, or the crusade ending. Only by blood, and eventually, Perturabo built something with a single purpose, something just for Dorn. When Horus turned, 9 legions came for the throne. Horus held orbital superiority from the start. The traitor fleet began destroying Terra from above. Billions died in the opening phase. No soldiers, no warriors, civilian. The population of humanity's greatest world burning while Dorn watched his void shields absorb what they could. But the walls held. His walls held. So the traitors landed, and the siege ground to something hideous. Millions of men in the rubble, Titan war engines tearing entire districts apart, Astartes fighting hand-to-hand in corridors both sides knew by memory. And then Dorn found a crack. Not a weakness, a trap. His trap. The Saturnine Gambit. A section of the palace fortification he had deliberately left vulnerable. A hand-picked loyalist force hidden in a silence behind it. When the Iron Warriors and the Sons of Horus pushed through what they believed was a weakness, they worked into a slaughter. A crushing loyalist victory. And Dorn looked up from the bodies, and the outer palace was still gone. The traitors still had the skies, his sons were still dying in the streets. He had won the battle, but he was still losing the war. And then the thing his entire resistance had been built to prevent happened. The Emperor fell. Horus died aboard his flagship, but the cost was absolute, and it was Rogal Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra, who carried his father's broken body back from the War Master vessel. It was Dorn who placed the Emperor on the Golden Throne, and it was Dorn who received the last words that the Emperor of mankind ever spoke aloud. What those words were, nobody knows. They were spoken only to him. And here's where most people stop telling the story of Rogal Dorn. Here is the part nobody talks about. Because what you need to understand, what changes everything about the opening image, Dorn charging into Perturabo Fortress is what happened to him after the siege. He stopped caring whether he survived. Not loudly, not visibly, Rogal Dorn was not a man who collapsed in front of his sons. He did not stop giving order. He did not stop fighting. He just stopped fighting for anything. He wrapped himself in the pain glove, an instrument of penance used by the Imperial Fists, a device that simulates every pain receptor all in once, designed for warriors who needed to be atoned. Dorn spent days inside, not hours, but days. And when he emerged, still functional, still the Praetorian of Terra to anyone watching, something essential was gone. He had failed the Emperor. His words had not been enough. His father's final words were a secret he would carry alone, forever. And a man defined entirely by duty, who has failed in his duty completely, is a man without a map, no reason to survive. He was still standing. He had just stopped giving the Imperium a reason to keep him alive. Now go back to the opening image. Rogal Dorn, parade formation into the trap. You understand it now. Before we go ahead, every week we go deeper in the Warhammer 40k lore, so subscribe, the next one is already coming. Of course, Perturabo saw it. He has spent decades watching Dorn, studying him, building his own hatred into something precise and architectural. And during the scouting, the Imperial counter-offensive against the retreating traitor force, he built his masterwork. On a world called Sebastus IV, Perturabo constructed what he named the Eternal Fortress. Rings within rings of perfectly engineered defenses, kill zones feeding into heal zones, overlapping fire lanes, minefields between every position. Every element of it designed by the greatest siege breaker in the galaxy, specifically to destroy the greatest fortress builder. A trap so obvious it wasn't even hidden. Everybody warned Dorn. He knew, but he went anyway. The Imperial Fists advanced in a parade formation to the outer ring, not because Dorn had lost his tactical mind, but because the man who had stopped valuing his own life also had stopped running the equation. He wanted Perturabo. He wanted the fight. Somewhere beneath the discipline and the duty and the cold precision that built the walls of Terra, a part of Rogal Dorn had already decided that the outcome didn't matter. His sons died in waves. The Iron Warriors dismantled them with patient, methodical precision. Hundreds of the finest Imperial Fists, veterans of the siege, warriors who had held the palace walls against the 9th Legion, torn apart inside Perturabo's masterpiece. And Dorn pushed deeper. He screamed for Perturabo, charged through the corridors calling his brother's name, fighting not like a Primarch executing a strategy, but like a man trying to settle a debt he could only pay in blood. Perturabo waited, let him exhaust himself, let him break against the walls of the Eternal Fortress the way every enemy had always broken against the walls. It was Guilliman who ended it. The Ultramarines fleet arrived and forced the withdrawal, dragged what remained of the Imperial Fists out of the Iron Cage by force, and Rogal Dorn survived. He had to live with that. Guilliman's prize for the rescue was the Codex Astartes, the Great Reconstruction, no more legions, every Space Marine force divided into independent chapters of 1,000 warriors, separate command structures dispersed across the Imperium. The Imperial Fists had been more than a legion. They were his sons, his identity, his only remaining connection to the purpose the Emperor had given him the day he was named Praetorian of Terra. And the brother who had just saved his life was asking him to break them apart. There were veterans who refused, warriors who had held the palace walls. They didn't want to see themselves divided. Some accounts suggest Dorn initially stood with them, not from pride, but because this man had given everything and deserved a choice. In the end, he relented. The Imperial Fists were carved into successor. The Crimson Fist, the Black Templars, the Soul Drinkers, all sent it to a galaxy that no longer had Rogal Dorn to lead them. He watched his legacy fracture and said nothing. The last confirmed account of Rogal Dorn is brief. During the first Black Crusade, Abaddon's first emergence from the Eye of Terror, a Chaos war fleet was cutting through Imperial space. Dorn took a company of his sons and boarded one of their vessels. Not a strategic raid, not a coordinated assault. A boarding action, close range, into the dark. And he never came back. The Imperial Fist found one thing in the wreckage: his hand, severed at the wrist, recovered from the debris of a vessel that no longer existed. Whether Rogal Dorn died in that action or was taken or disappeared into something the Imperium has no name for, nobody can say with certainty. He is listed, officially, as missing. Presumed dead. His sons keep the hand as relic, a reminder that the Praetorian of Terra died the way he lived, without retreat, without ceremony, without anyone watching. So, did he fail? He failed to save the Emperor. He led his sons into an iron cage and spent them as a death wish. He watched his legion divided by the brother who dragged him out of his own grave. He disappeared to the dark, leaving nothing behind but a severe hand. By every measurable standard, yes. But here what I keep coming back to. He built the walls that made the siege survivable. He placed the Emperor on the throne that keeps humanity alive 10 millennia later. He absorbed every impossible expectation the Imperial loaded onto him, and he never put it down. Not once, not even at the end. He just stopped letting himself matter. This isn't a story about Primarch who failed. It's a story about what the Imperium asks of his most loyal servants and what he quietly destroys in the process. Rogal Dorn gave everything, and the Imperium took it. So let me know in the comment, was Rogal Dorn the greatest of the loyal Primarchs, or did his failure cost the Imperium more than he never gave? As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.